From the heights, one can see the city destroyed with a giant crater. On the ground a young man is, with his face dirty with blood, is holding a boy by the neck, about to throw a punch. The white-haired boy laughs and says he knew. He looks to the side and says that the protagonist is different from those useless ones. Looking at the ground, there are some bodies that appear to have been massacred. In a fierce battle, the protagonist, with tears streaming and hatred in his eyes, tells him to shut up. Then the boy, with a sadistic smile, tells the protagonist to kill him, because now he is the only one who can do it. But he refuses, and says that he will not be the one to kill him. Next he grabs the boy by the collar, and looking into his eyes, he says he promised his team that he would put him in jail, so that justice would be done. As the rain falls, he says the boy will be punished by the law. But in his mind the protagonist says that he still regrets not having killed him. Some time later on TV, a photo of a white-haired boy appears, with the headline that someone, the worst villain in history, was captured, but there were many deaths in battle. The presenter says that the villain, who made the whole world tremble with fear, was sentenced to death, and in the courtroom, there are several armed soldiers, while Huang is imprisoned in a straitjacket. The TV lady explains that a device was used to suppress his powers, but he is, with an unconcerned smile, he will be imprisoned in the 5th sublevel of the prison for cruel villains, called Ruculus. A young man watches in silence, as the presenter says that some of the heroes who fought alongside Ganyu died. Hearing this, the young man shows a bitter reaction. The presenter continues saying that the funeral for the heroes of equality will be held tonight. While on TV, one by one their faces are shown. The protagonist continues in silence, with a somber expression, and before the TV lady says anything else, someone turns off the TV. Ganyu then looks back and sees a young man in uniform, with a friendly smile, saying that he should be lying down and not watching TV, since he is still recovering. This is Gang Voshio, the protagonist, brother and prison officer at Ruculus prison. Ganyu calls him by name, and staring his own hands. He begins to reflect then with a bloodthirsty look. He says he himself should have killed Huang. Gang Ho says he made a promise to his companions, and in a memory we see the leader of the heroes, saying that their job is to save people, not kill. She continues talking to the rest of the group, that they should not kill, even if it is a terrible villain, because even criminals have the right to be judged, because they are also people. Gang Yu comments that it sounds cool, but asks what they would do if the heroes were killed. Then the captain asks him to promise that he will not kill anyone. No matter what happens, he remains silent. Then, in the hospital room, his brother says he agrees with her words. He says that only the law can condemn people, but his agents like him, who need to execute the sentences. He then shares confidential information that Huang will be executed next week, and that he will be present. He assures that Ganju did his job as a hero, but now he must leave the rest to the prison officers. Then he gets up from his chair and calls the protagonist to say goodbye to his companions. Going to the funeral, several bouquets and thank you letters were placed on the heroes' graves, while there were also protests in favor of the villain's execution. In front of the hero's altar, full flowers. Genjo and his brother have sad looks. They leave a flower. Then a week passed, and on the day of Wang's execution, he escaped from his transport structure. Then another funeral, but this time for Ganyu's brother. He cries and wonders why the criminal, who should have been punished, survived, while his brother, who ended up being killed. And then sitting on the ground next to the altar, someone calls his name. A woman in uniform, accompanied by 2 other guards, says it's been a while since she saw him. This is the prison director, who wants to talk to protagonist. Gang Yu does not respond and just stares. She hands him a tablet with the video. Then he questions what this is. She says it is today's video, showing what happened at Hwan's execution. In the video, several agents are carrying the villain on a cargo cart. Wang calls the agent next to him. Then he says that he looks like Gang Ju, and asks if he is his brother, which surprises Gang Ho. The villain questions if he is an agent, because he has no powers, and asks which of the two brothers is the oldest. But Gang Ho does not respond a word. Wang Nan speaks again, and he asked the protagonist brother how he feels about killing someone. Gang Ho is incredulous at the question, and the villain says that he is a prison officer and executioner. He bets that Gang Ho has already killed people, and asks what the feeling is. The protagonist brother remains silent, but Wang says he feels it is very easy. Ganko is again shocked by what the villain is saying. Wang, with a sadistic smile, says that it only takes a gentle touch, and they burst like a soap bubble. Protagonist brother gets angry, and then he says that he fights against a horrible sense of guilt, even when he needs to execute scum. Like him, he starts having nightmares. After nightmares in his dreams, the condemned appear, and they say that Gango is a murderer just like them. The prisoners always come back to torment him. In his dreams, Wang says that despite this, he still works in the penitentiary. Then Gango says he is just doing his job as a prison officer, because someone needs to do it. After that, already in the execution room, the villain is properly placed in the execution chair. Gango asked the prisoner if he has any last words. Wang, with a frightening smile, asks again who is older between him and his brother. But Gango ignores it and starts the execution. Then the countdown begins from 3, 2, 1. And just at the moment the button is pressed, everything goes dark in the video. Gang Yu doesn't understand. The director explains that, right at the moment of the execution, the energy of Ruculus fell, due to an unidentified electromagnetic pulse. The video screen remains black in the prison. The guards wonder if it was a blackout, and Gang Ho is already looking for where the prisoner is, until he hears a voice beside him. Here's Huang, free from his restraints with a smile on his face, saying that he knew only Gang Yu could kill him. Gang Ho yells for the other agents to get down, and then an explosion occurs. Smoke fills the corridor. An agent calls for backup on the radio, saying the prisoner broke the suppression device. While he is repeating the message on the radio, a hand touches his shoulder. Beside him is Huang smiling, and before the agent could say anything, his face begins to swell. The prisoner, still smiling, says that was a blast. Suddenly, the agent's head bursts and pieces fly everywhere. Gang Ho is horrified to see the psychopath, begins to approach. Then he says he thinks Gango is the older brother, and asks if he is right. The protagonist brother grabs his baton, and in a desperate move tries to hit the prisoner. But before he could finish the blow, it was enough for Huang to raise his hand, to make his arm twist completely. It was in the blink of an eye. Gang Ho fell to the ground, screaming in pain, and Wang asks if he got it right. The protagonist's trembling brother does not give up, and grabs his baton again, telling the prisoner that he deserves to be punished by law. But the psychopath looks indifferently at him, and then Gamo goes on the attack again, saying that justice will be done. But it was enough for Wan to raise his arm, that in a matter of seconds, the protagonist's brother was crushed. Blood flew everywhere. On the ground is a ball of meat that until then was Gang Ho. The only thing left intact was his hat. Then Wang says he will have to ask the protagonist if he got it right. After finishing watching the video, Yang Yu is with a look of anger. Xian begins to explain the unidentified attacks. Ended up releasing all the prisoners from all fours, without their suppression devices. The good news is that they managed to prevent them from escaping the prison. But many of the officers ended up being trapped with them. Ganju, with blood in his eyes, asks who launched the attack. But Yuen says they are still investigating. Then she apologizes for asking something like this at the funeral of the hero's brother, and asks if he could suppress the rebellion in Ruculus prison. Without hesitation Jinyu agrees, but with one condition. He remembers what his companions said. The prison is currently in total chaos, with some prisoners trying to open the door. His companions believe that heroes save people, and should not kill suddenly. The door begins to open for a moment. All the prisoners stop to observe. Then they start to celebrate. As they run towards the exit, Gang Yu's brother said that only the law could condemn people, but it is the executioners who carry out the sentence. In a matter of seconds, the prisoners were all thrown away, with an explosive blow. Seeing this, everyone was confused. At the door stood a man. Gang Yu did not want to enter the prison as a hero. With a deadly look, he introduces himself as the new prison officer, because earlier, he had asked to enter Ruculus as an executioner. Upon hearing that name, an expression of surprise immediately appeared on the prisoners' faces. They begin to wonder why there is a hero wearing an agent's uniform, but soon their faces become malicious. Thinking that Ganji was a fool they can take advantage of, then they decide to attack him. But he is not intimidated and remains still. Then when they are close enough, he throws a punch, and with just one punch, he manages to pierce the bodies of the prisoners, making them split in half and fly away. The impact was so strong that it created a trail of carnage among the prisoners, who were all astonished by what they saw. They couldn't believe what had just happened. Ganyu begins to test the built-in microphone in his uniform, and then calmly begins to explain to everyone that, by order of the government, everyone there, from the ground floor and each of the sublevels, up to the 5th sublevel where Huang is located. Upon hearing the protagonist's voice, Huang gets excited, but Gang Yu only wishes to fulfill his brother's duty. And then he completes, saying that all of them will be executed immediately. The prisoners can't believe what they heard. Soon they start to scream, asking what the hell he's talking about. But Ganyu remains serene. Then he asked if they think it's unfair to die after having killed so many people. One of the prisoners in the back starts to complain. His name is Halida and he killed 12 people. So he says he didn't kill that many. Another named Brooks, who was arrested for killing 7 people, says he has more fingers on his hands than the number of people he killed. A chubby one named Cade, who was arrested for child abduction, sexual assault and homicides, says he killed fewer than 5 people. And then everyone starts to ask who he is, to decide he's going to kill them, and start asking for a lawyer, saying they are also human beings. Silent in the middle of the crowd. One of them seems to be devising a plan. He thinks they are making too much noise. His name is Choi Gowan, who was arrested for sexual assault and for killing 8 people. Choi begins to plan something, while the agent is distracted with the other prisoners. Ganyu remains serene in front of the complaints. Then Choi takes advantage of the shouting and quickly passes through all the prisoners, without anyone noticing. But he sees out of the corner of his eye something approaching. It was Ganju's leg that hit a kick right in the face of the fugitive. Immediately the other prisoners fell silent and destroy. His body falls bleeding to the ground. The new agent says he will give them a choice. He says they can calmly lock the control device and return to their cells to wait for their execution. The second option is to die by his hands. Right there the prisoners are afraid to hear that, but one of them curses the protagonist and asks what he's saying. Then he says that naturally, the best option is the last one. He explains that they are going to die anyway, so it's better to die rebelling. And with a cynical smile he asks if the terms of the negotiation are not irrational. In that situation, but Genji replies that it is not a negotiation, because the last thing he can offer them is mercy. Immediately, All the prisoners begin to tremble for their lives, and even come to question why a hero of equality is there. Some prisoners decide to use the control device again, but the sarcastic prisoner begins to open his mouth, with a glow coming out of it. Then he lets out a sonic scream, and this makes all the prisoners fall silent again. He raises his finger, and calls for everyone to listen to him. Then he says that even if he is a hero of equality, there is no need to make a deal with just one strong man, because he has already managed to kill a second-class hero through teamwork, which leaves the other prisoners surprised and incredulous. Upon hearing this, the prisoners who were about to surrender begin to smile at the possibility of defeating the new agent. Then the prisoner with the sonic scream says, "There is no need to be scared," and says they will kill him to regain their freedom. After hearing that, Ganji realizes that he must be the leader of the trash that the officer had mentioned in a memory. The director explains that Ruculus separates prisoners depending on the level of danger they represent. On the first floor are those who killed many people. There are more than 300 serial killers. Heading to the sub-level of the first floor are 100, who have put cities at risk. The second floor has more than 30, who put a metropolis in danger. And on the third floor are 10 people who put the nation in danger. The sub-level of the fourth floor has 5 people, who put the continent in danger. Finally, on the sub-level of the fifth floor, there are only 3 people, including Huang, who have put the entire world in danger. Xian asks if he thinks it's a lot, but says the number of people to deal with will be much smaller. Then, she talks about the prisoners of the second sublevel. There are 2 young people there, who use some kind of power that holds people by the head, and then order them to confess their sins. Already on the sub-level of the 5th floor, where Huang finds another girl, who has freed herself from the restraints of the straitjacket. He holds a ball of meat in his hand, and says he didn't know there was someone there, while the director explains to the protagonist that they are not very friendly with each other. The girl looks at Huang Yen differently. He gives a sadistic smile and says he will be able to pass the time until Gang Yu gets there. Then the director continues, explaining that the first floor is unique. She shows a photo and says, all the prisoners are united around that prisoner. In the photo is the prisoner who shouted. His name is Hilison. He has a special ability that strengthens comrades through the sound he emits. Back in prison, Ganju says, the prisoner killed 7 people in a hospital, and counting the heroine told was 8 people. But Hilison corrects him and says it was 10 people. Then, with a malevolent smile, he says the heroine was pregnant with twins. The protagonist stares in silence. Then, he calls the director on the microphone of the uniform, and asks how strong the prison is, because he will need a little strength. But she tells him not to worry, because she guarantees that the prison will not collapse. The protagonist is relieved that he will not need to hold back his strength. Hilson says he is bluffing. He says the protagonist did nothing, even when he was a hero of equality, and bets that he captured Huang, using his colleagues as bait. Then, with a sadistic smile, he says he will send him to where his colleagues are. Then he activates his ability with a scream, ordering the other prisoners to kill Ganju. And the prisoners begin to feel strength. And thanks to the ability, they feel they are overflowing with strength. Helison calls all the prisoners from there, and orders them to attack. But Genju just kicks with a dark red aura, and all the prisoners are cut in half, without even being able to reach him. Helison and other prisoners were paralyzed to see that. He doesn't understand what just happened. In a matter of seconds, all the prisoners who went on the attack were shattered on the ground, and this leaves Hilison terrified. Without wasting time, Gang Yu begins to launch his next attack. He raises his leg high and stomps on the ground with force, his energy looking like lightning. attacks all the prisoners. Throwing them up, the impact was so strong that it reverberated throughout the prison. Somewhere inside a cell, a prisoner with a mask on his face is startled to hear the bang and immediately recognizes that Ganju is there. The prisoners were thrown up with that attack. Everyone was screaming as they fell. But look him up, Genju is coming from above, with energy emanating from his hand. About to punch, his hand turns into a claw, as he begins to activate his ability mode. Upon hearing this, the prisoners scream and try to attack him, to stop his blow. But Genju activates mode 1 of his ability. An array of energy pierces all the prisoners at the same time, forming a web of death in a matter of seconds. The prisoners were cut in half. Hilison didn't even have time to react. He couldn't believe it with a single attack. Gaju left a pile of bodies behind. The prisoners have been slaughtered. Then, the protagonist gives the report over the microphone. All the prisoners on the first floor were executed. So he will proceed to solitary. Ganyu wonders how many people were killed. He no longer knows if they were dozens or hundreds. In a corridor, he finds 2 more prisoners and orders them to choose. Either they put on the suppression device, or they will be killed right there. The strong prisoner is outraged by this. Then he goes to attack him, but it only took a kick to explode the prisoner's head. While Ganju, unconcerned, remembers that Seon said there were about 300 prisoners on the first floor. The other man is frightened to see the way the other prisoner was killed, and immediately says he will put on the device. Ganju tells him to pick up the device. The man extends his hands with a look of fear, and asks for the device, but he makes a sadistic smile. Then a purple energy ball appears in his hands. Then he fires an energy beam at Ganyu, and asks if the protagonist thought he would obey him. But after finishing his rage, Ganyu is intact. One of the villains that his companion Tommy captured said he feels sorry for people who don't have physical type superpowers. After Tone captures her with her chain ability, the villain says that people with that kind of power will never know the exhilarating sensation of crushing a person with their own hands. And as Ganyu punches the prisoner, he wonders if this should give a feeling of euphoria. But he says it just feels like breaking an egg with his fist. Upon reaching solitary, he enters the code to open the cell. Inside is a man, and he says he was wondering what all that noise was. The masked prisoner, upon seeing the protagonist, confirms that it was him responsible for the noise. He asks how long it has been. This is Chirk Fielder, in prison for cannibalism and desecration of corpses. He stands up and comments that the hero got another job, although he doesn't seem to have a good face. Then Ganju offers him to choose between putting on the device or dying. The prisoner takes off his mask and says he didn't know they would meet like this. In a memory, Chu is tied to a stone post, tied by Tome's chains, but at that moment, Ganju realizes something. A pot of blood dripping next to his severed hand. Kik asks if it looks tasty, and with a sick smile he says, they were killed and cooked recently, so it would be delicious. Upon hearing this, Genju says the villain leaves him no choice. He already activates his power. His companions look worried, and Genju says he will have to kill the villain. But someone yells his name, the captain of the heroes. With a sad look she says, Nugong. You walked away annoyed. She comments that he seemed very uncomfortable when the heroes decided to subdue him instead of killing in the cell. Ganyu is already with his power activated and says that if he does not choose to put on the device, then he will consider that he chose death. The prisoner asks Ganyu if he knew why he killed so many people, but in a quick move, the protagonist rips off the prisoner's head and says he's not interested, but a voice continues to speak. Chuck is still alive and says he killed people so they would remember him. Then he continues saying that when he kills someone, he becomes the most memorable person in their lives. And thanks to his power, He can use it to record his memory, in the eyes of terrified victims, using his hallucination power, so they never forget him even in death. And the proof of this is that he remembers everyone he killed. Then he asks Gangyu if he should show each one of them. So Chip begins to use his power to bring a girl. But before he could react, his arm is cut off with a quick blow. As his arm bleeds, Gangyu wonders if that's why he's a solitary prisoner. He forms a sword with his energy, while saying he really wants to stop Chuck's chattering mouth. Then he comments that his power can't be fast enough to dodge Ganyu's attack. Chuck, before dying, asked the protagonist if he remembers how many people he has killed so far. Gangyu says he doesn't remember, because trash like him don't deserve to be remembered. But he is surprised to see something. His fellow heroes appear in front of him. The captain looks at him with sorrow, asking him not to do that. Gangyu is speechless, his companions calling his name, and Chuk, nervous and with a sadistic smile, says, maybe the protagonist will remember this. But while Ganju's companions call his name, he does not hesitate, and with a single blow cuts all the hallucinations, which then dissipate immediately. Ganju, with a fierce look, asks if the cheap tricks are over. Sheik, seeing this, is speechless. Then he says he can't believe Ganju cut his colleagues. Without hesitation, the protagonist approaches, while explaining that his companions were already dead, making the man look at him with fear, as Ganju cuts him in half with a single blow, while saying they are all illusions. In the end, then he says he is no longer a hero, but prison guard Cheek Fallen responds that he is not a simple prison guard, and in his last breaths he says, Ganyu is nothing more than a monster not much different from Huan. Hearing this, Ganyu looks surprised. On the 5th sub-level, Wang is still holding the meatball in his hand. He says there wasn't even a single act of resistance from the girl lying on the ground. She remains silent. Wang wants to know when Ganyu will get down there. He wonders if maybe he should go up. Outside it's already night. From the top of a mountain, 3 people watch what happens in the prison. A man calls the woman Sink, a name, and asks when she wants them to start intervening. But she is watching the prison security cameras on a tablet until Ganyu appears. Seeing him, she's happy and says he will be her husband. The man can't believe what he heard. Then Sika repeats that Ganyu will be her husband. The man named Canis says Mrs. Sinka already won and Huang is her husband. The woman on his other side is called Kato, and she agrees with Canis, saying that's why they launched the attack. To save Huang, Canis says, Genju is a hero and an obstacle to human progress. The woman who is watching says he was a hero, but now doesn't seem to be one. Canis and Kato say she has to choose only one, because polygamy is a crime, and Sinka is undecided about which of the two to choose. Then, with an excited look, she decides she will choose the one who survives. With a smile, she wonders which of the two it will be. In the cell, the director appears to congratulate Ganyu on his work. After seeing the fallen bodies, she comments that he didn't waste time and clean the first floor in an instant. Then she suggests that he rest a little, since the prisoners will become exponentially more powerful. But Ganyu denies he wants to go down immediately, so he asks her to open the door. She agrees, but before he goes down, Sean has a favor to ask. She says she is still receiving signals, because there are still living guards on the lower floors sending signals. So she asks him to help them, so they can return to their families. Danjo asks if Yuen knows how many agents are alive on each floor, but she says she doesn't know the exact number, because all communication devices are broken below the first floor, except for one on one of the lower floors. An agent crawls on the ground. The cameras and all other communication devices on the 5th sublevel are working. The agent screams, begging for help. But behind him is Huang, accompanied by a flying woman. The villain just raises his hand, Then the guard starts to swell and explodes, throwing ketchup everywhere. Yuen says she's sure someone wants them to see what's happening down there. After hearing this, Ganju says he will go ahead. Then the ages warn. They are ready to open the door to the first sub-level. Then the director grants permission. As the door opens, she says again to be careful, because there is a difference in strength between the prisoners of the first and second floors. They are like heaven and earth. But the door barely opened, and two prisoners suddenly appeared and hit a blow on Ganju. One of them calls him an idiot, and the other asks if the fastest is the winner. Immediately, Ganju begins to be shot by several prisoners. They were already prepared, because they knew the protagonist would go there. Seeing this, the director is worried about Ganju. But right in front of her, prisoner appears, saying she should worry about herself, because she also has her own problems. He notices something when he sees her up close. Then, seeing that she is the head of the guards, he grabs her by the neck and says, "It's a rare opportunity," he says. He always wanted to take that presumptuous look off her, and he wonders what he should do. Then he yells to the other prisoners saying, "Whoever catches the director first will have an opportunity," but he soon loses his speech. When he looks back, all the prisoners were dead on the ground. He doesn't understand what happened. But when he looks up, Yang Yu is coming from above with an energy-charged punch. And again with a single punch, he shatters the prisoner. The impact knocks the director to the ground. Then Ganju warns, he says, for her not to go down to the next floor, because it's not safe. Stun, still somewhat surprised by the situation, agrees. But when Ganju is leaving, she calls him and says that the villain Tomoki, captured by Toma, is in isolation on the first sublevel. He says he knows and goes ahead. Meanwhile, in the solitary cell on the first sublevel, prisoners, after hearing the bang of Ganju's blow, begin to wonder if the prisoners managed to escape. But a woman calls them stupid and says, "Of course not," then asks if they think there is someone among them capable of making such a big noise. This is Tomoki, who has already killed 28 heroes. She says she told the prisoners to stay, but they didn't want to listen. She's a former heroine who believes they became villains because they don't think with their heads. Suddenly a big guy calls her a bitch. He asks if she wants to die, but she is not intimidated, and questions if he thinks he can kill her. Tamaki says, everyone there is in prison for killing citizens, and asks if they have ever killed someone with superpowers. Then she questions if they have even fought against someone with superpowers, but thinks not, because they wouldn't be there if they have fought. The big guy then says he's about to kill a person with a special ability, and starts to activate his ability. But with a single blow from Tamaki, he's cut in half. Then she asked, who here wants to kill or die, as she has already captured countless villains while she was a heroine. So she learned to fight against people with superpowers. And it was with this knowledge that she killed many heroes. And she says she will teach them if they join forces. She will tell how to hunt a person with special abilities. And most importantly, she knows about Ganyu's abilities. The prisoners are surprised to hear that she knows about the protagonist's abilities. Then they ask how she knows this. Tamaki says she had a long career as a heroine, and therefore has a good notion of most of the hero's information. One of the prisoners asks what difference that makes. He says that Gangji was part of the equality group, which was only made up of first-class heroes, and that is different from a third-class hero like her. Hearing this, Tamaki laughs, and she says that after Lhasa became leader of equality, there were reforms in the hero industry. She redefined the meaning of hero and forbade them from killing villains. In addition, she often set up teams to train together. And finally, the hero classification system was abolished. Tamaki then says that when Ganju became a member of equality, it was when the system was abolished. No one expected him to get in. since he had no notable achievements, and there were even rumors that he had powerful connections. The prisoner says he has never seen Gang Yu fight, but by the short time it took him to clean the first floor, he must be at least a second-class hero, or a level above them. Tamaki says the first floor was full of riff-raff. She says that even they would be able to easily eliminate the prisoners from above on that floor. All the prisoners had murdered over 1,000 people each, and the one with the most murders on his account is the one talking to Tomoki. Then she says she's not saying Ganju is weak, because he is certainly strong, but she knows what his weakness is, and therefore guarantees they can hunt him. Speech asks if she's sure about his weakness. She then asks if they have any other option. Besides that, next, she asks what they are going to do, because the enemy is approaching. The prisoners decide to join her. Speech remains silent, until Tamaki asks if he will also go. He decides to join too, and asks what the plan will be. Centuries ago, when superpowers appeared in humans, researchers classify them into three main categories. The ability to transform or strengthen the body is known as physical type. The ability to create something out of nothing is the creation type superpower, and those not included in the other categories are of the special type. In prison, the prisoners stare at him, and there is Ganju walking calmly. A blue ray interconnects the prisoners by the eyes. This is Tamaki's ability, capable of allowing communication by brain waves, which also allows them to see what the other prisoners are seeing. She knows that Genji's superpower is of the physical type. Like hers, Tamaki remembers when she realized she had discovered his weakness when she was still a heroine, and saw him training. He was using a training robot, a robot made for combat training. Back in prison, Ganju again offers two options: either put on the suppression device or die. But a purple ray begins to shine from inside a cell, and a shot hits him, just like in training with the robot. Tomoki asked the prisoners to use the cell doors as a shield, so that users of creation special abilities could attack from a distance. A sequence of shots were fired. Speech says the protagonist is just taking the blows. As Tomoki had said, she knew that there was a reason for Ganyu not to dodge the attacks. The reason is because it wasn't worth it for him to dodge. So thinking about this, Tamaki added one thing to the long-range attacks, and suddenly Ganyu was caught by surprise. Several suppression devices were attached to him. Through the long-range attacks, from afar a guy uses his ability to fix the devices. The plan seemed to have been a success. Earlier, Tomoki sent the prisoners to search the guards' corpses for devices. Speech says they are devices from the first sub-level, and asks if they will work on him. But Tamaki says that 10 of these should be enough to suppress a second-class hero, and 15 for a first-class hero. Then she gives this task to Million, who has the power to attach an object to a target. Next, she says that just to be safe, they will attach 30 devices. Ganju is full of devices on his neck, arms and legs. Seeing this, the prisoners get excited. But there were 3 mistakes in Tomoki's strategy. The devices began to break. That was the first mistake. In a matter of seconds, Ganyu was released. The prisoners were without reaction, and right after, he punched several prisoners into the air. The devices didn't work because Ganyu's strength far exceeds that of first-class hero. Speech reports that all devices were destroyed, while Tamaki is speechless. After the attack, the surviving prisoners begin to run, and Tamaki passes on the message to prepare the next strategy. Then someone tells Ganju not to move. A prisoner is using an agent as a hostage, and threatens to kill him if the protagonist moves. Other prisoners are also holding 2 more hostages, while trying to negotiate, but before they could finish talking, Ganyu uses his ability, and launches a ray that pierces the prisoners, killing them, and freeing the guards in a matter of moments. That was the second mistake. Despite Genji's power being in the physical type, it is also of the special type. And there was also the third failure. One of the prisoners calls the protagonist, says he will put the control device back on, and then asked for his life to be spared. But Ganyu kills him before he could finish speaking. This was Tomiko's third mistake, trying to use a strategy for someone to whom that strategy does not apply. Ganyu uses his power to attack all the prisoners around, even those who are far away. Then, with an annoyed look, he says it's too late from afar. Speech was falling through brain waves. Seeing this, he becomes frightened, desperate in asking Tomoki if there is another plan. But she ignores him and refuses to believe what just happened. He screams, saying you shouldn't have believed her. But Tomoki continues to question why the devices didn't work. Even though there were 30, Speech says he will put on the controller, and she tells him to shut up. Then, she gets angry and pierces his chest with an attack. Then she starts to ask who he thinks he is, to raise his voice, because they are not on the same level, just because they are together. After killing Speech, she comments that she had more than enough to contain a first-class hero, but he managed to break everything. And frightened, she wonders why he didn't fight on the front lines. Since he is so strong, none of that made sense to her. Suddenly there's a noise. A penitentiary agent was crawling. Noticing that he was seen, he starts to cry, desperately begging for help. Then he raises his arm about to attack him. But his hand is cut off. Takes her a while to understand. And behind her is Ganju. Initially, he calls her a heroine, but soon corrects himself and calls her a prisoner. Then asks if she has any last words. The woman starts to laugh nervously, because she knows she's in trouble. Ganyu asks if those are her last words, but she asks if it's true, that he is the only hero of equality still alive. When he confirms, she chuckles and then asks if Tom also died. But Ganyu remains silent. With that, Tomiko has confirmation that Tommy really died. She comments that she told her silly little sister not to become a heroine, then says she can't believe he killed so many people, being part of equality, and asks if the other heroes know about it. She tries to provoke, saying he knows that Lhasa tried to change the hero industry, but wonders if she wouldn't be sad to know that he undid all her work. Ganyu stares at her for a while and says her last words were too long. A while ago, when Tamaki became a heroine, she felt there was something wrong with the hero industry. They hunted villains, and this gave immunity, even when citizens were killed in the process, and they were above the law. In an alley, a thug holds a girl, pointing a knife at her neck when a hero arrives. He yells at the hero not to move, but in a single attack the criminal is cut in half, which also ends up killing the girl, while the hero gives a malicious smile and says, the mission was accomplished. Tomoki was called Bliss for a simple reason. She was walking hand in hand with her younger sister, who said she always helped her. That girl was Tomei, but said she was very incredible. Just like a hero, Tomo had no superpower, and depended a lot on her sister. But there was also something twisted, somewhere in Tomo's mind, because she agreed with Tomo, saying that she really is incredible, with a somewhat arrogant tone. She had a job as a heroine, the job of saving people, but instead of feeling proud, she did it to feel a sense of superiority over others. Tomo continued with her activities, until she killed a villain for the first time, during a mission on her first murder. For the first time in her life, she felt an overwhelming sense of superiority that she had never felt before. Tamaki realized that for her, killing people was exhilarating. After that, she didn't stop killing anyone indiscriminately, whether villain or citizen, and even heroes. But Tamaki's favorite type of murder was killing her weaker colleagues. She loved the expression of surprise and the feeling of betrayal, to the point of getting lost with the delight of that sensation. The expression of seeing a colleague begging to be spared that left Tomoki on cloud 9. And she never got tired of that feeling. But no crime goes unpunished. Tommy found it suspicious that her sister came home late at night smelling of blood. So one day she decided to follow her. And in a dark alley, she witnessed a murder scene caused by her older sister. Tomon is astonished by that. Tomoki says she told her not to leave the house so late. Then she says there's no way. And with a sadistic smile, asks if Tommy wants to join her. Her younger sister doesn't believe what she heard. And Tomoki says she'll do it alone. But Tommy screams. And then chains appear out of nowhere, which end up preventing Tomoki's hand. Tommy ended up awakening her ability. That was her first activity as a future heroine. After that day Tommy became a heroine, and continued to pursue her sister, who became a villain, until one day she finally caught Tomoki. When captured, she says that Tome is no longer calling her sister. And that is sad. Then she says her power got stronger. But that's even sadder, since her power is not physical type. She says, those without physical abilities are really pitiful. But Tome remains silent. It is at this moment that Tomoki says, they will never understand how thrilling it is to crush people directly. And then she says, her little sister will never understand her. But Tome says she never had a sister, like her back in the cell. Tamaki asks if her sister died without suffering. Then Ganju talks about when she felt in the battle against Wong. She was in pain, and in her last words, she asked her sister to save her. He says Tommy died looking for her. Older sister Tomoki says she shouldn't have asked that. Then she activates her ability and says, hearing that only made her feel worse. Right after finishing speaking, she goes on the attack. The protagonist remains serene. And when she kicks him with her blade, right before his eyes, he simply disappears and reappears right behind her. Tamaki tries to react in time, but Ganju lands a kick, making her be thrown against the wall. A lot of dust starts to rise after the impact, but Ganju remains in the same place. Then from inside the dust, Tamaki emerges with another attack. But Ganju punches her stomach as a counterattack, making her spit blood, and then falling to her knees on the ground. Her ability even gets deactivated. While Ganju says that, although she is a prisoner on death row, he is sad to have to kill someone from his teammate's family. Hearing this, Tamaki with a hopeful look asks if he could spare her. She even lowers her head and says he is a hero. But Gangyu says he is no longer one. Despite this, she continues begging for him to spare her, grabbing his leg and saying she doesn't want to die. Hearing that, he says, this kind of situation now is something she must have seen several times. Frequently then, he asks what she did with the people who begged her. Tamaki, crying, lets out a nervous laugh, seeing that there's no way out. Then Ganju delivers the final blow. The sound of his fight with the prisoners made the whole prison tremble. Even outside Kana's and Kato heard the bang. That sound made someone fall in love, and caused fear in others, while for some it only increased expectations even more. Inside on the last floor, Huang gets excited and decides he can't wait any longer, and will have to go up. But he receives a blow that throws him far away, to the point of knocking off the hat he took from Ganyu's brother. Huang is surprised by that attack. Someone appears asking if he's bored. An old man named Kingston asks if Huang wants Grandpa to play with him. The boy gets excited and calls him Scary Grandpa. The old man smiles, saying, he's just a kind and friendly grandpa who likes to play with children. In the control room, two agents call for the director and ask her to look at the camera. On the 5th sublevel, they are on alert with the encounter of Kingston and Wong. But the director says that's a good thing, and says that means one of them will die. She hopes Kingston wins, since he's not as dangerous as Huang. But she notices something strange. Then she wonders why the boy is keeping that woman in the air. The psychopath asks if the old man will play with him, and Kingston says he will. But the boy says he doesn't want to. The old man says he would love to play with him. Kingston was the first criminal to be imprisoned in Ruckus, but unlike most of the prisoners on levels 4 and 5, who were imprisoned for killing millions of people, he killed only 3. His first victim was the villain named Caracas, who was the most powerful of this time. The other 2 victims were Clark and Yahello, the most powerful hero duo of the time. Kingston appeared out of nowhere and simply killed the 3 most powerful people in the world. He wondered if that made him the strongest person now. Then he said it was disappointing, and then let the government arrest him. It was a threat to the world, but surrendered after killing 3 people, and got away with it, because the government and the Hero Association didn't get along at the time. He managed to have his execution postponed for 30 years. After insistence, Huang agrees with his ability. The corpses begin to move and start to float around him. Then he turns them into meatballs. So he says they can play a little, and starts shooting the meatballs at the old man. But he remains immobile. Then, with a gentle hand movement, he grabs one of the meatballs and throws it in another direction, and starts repeating this at an absurd speed. In a matter of seconds, all the meatballs are behind him. It's as if they passed right through him. Wang looks indifferent, and the old man gives a small smile. He said he thought the boy used telekinesis, but realized it's not that. By the way he attacked. Then he asks if he has any other attack. But Wang says he changed his mind, and says it doesn't seem fun to play with the old man, because it makes no sense to kill someone who's going to die of old age anyway. Kingston calls the boy arrogant, and says he's seen a lot of people like him, who think they're the biggest fish in the pond. He plants his foot on the ground and with a push, breaks the floor into several pieces. The old man says that acting that way, they allow ego to get the best of them. In the control room, a dramatic agent is afraid when he feels the tremor, and says the building is collapsing. The director says this building cannot be destroyed, even by the power of first-class heroes, since there are 20 layers of special walls. But in the sub-level, Kingston says he will teach the boy good manners, and disappears from view with a jump. Huang is intrigued, but suddenly realizes that the old man is about to hit a flying kick in his face. He comes within inches, and again, another bang happens with the impact of the blow. The whole prison shakes, and the director can't take the agent's drama anymore. Even Ganju feels the bang. Sean asks who won the fight, and the agent says, that's not the problem in the sublevel. Wang looks surprised then. The agent informs that Kingston destroyed all the walls. Hearing this, the director says, they are screwed. Wang says, he's like a living drilling platform, and asks how many walls he broke. He even considers following Kingston, but someone behind him asks, why follow an old man? The woman smiles. It's the same one who was watching from outside the prison. She says it will be more fun for Huang to stay there and talk to her. The director can't believe what she sees. Huang asks the woman who she is, and Sinka replies that, you will know more about her if they talk. From the control room, the director wonders who the hell that woman is, and how she got to the 5th sublevel. But before continuing the conversation, Sinka points to the camera and says, the viewers can go away, and then turns off the transmission. The director is very irritated. Meanwhile, Gandiu arrives at another door. He announces that he has cleared the 1st sublevel, and asks the director to open the gates. Of the 2nd sublevel, the director tries to speak. She asks him to wait, but the signal is interrupted. He says, the signal must be bad in the underground floors, and then opens the doors by hand without any effort. As Ganyu descends the stairs, he notices something different. From the 1st floor and the 1st sublevel, they smelled of blood everywhere, but there was no stench at all on the 2nd sublevel. In fact, there was simply no one. Not even a corpse in sight. Everything was too clean until he hears a scream. A girl in a prison guard uniform is running from two monsters. They seem to want to devour her, and she yells for them to stay away, until she notices Ganju and asks for help. At that moment, one of the monsters behind her is about to fire something from its mouth, but it is destroyed with a single blow from the protagonist. The girl falls to her knees on the ground and is surprised. Ganyu asks if she's okay, but the girl runs to hug him and again calls him Gang Ho. She says she thought he was on the 5th sublevel and asked why he never told her he had superpowers. The protagonist pulls her away from him. That explains that he is not Gangu, but his brother. The woman is surprised to see that it is the hero Gangu. Then she asks what he is doing there in a guard uniform. Gangu says she must be his brother's colleague, but it's not safe there. But she corrects him and calls him brother-in-law. He's surprised. Then she says it's the first time they've met. The girl introduces herself, saying she will be his sister-in-law, and says they look very much alike. Ganyu is speechless. Meanwhile, in the solitary of the 2nd sublevel, a voice calls Mel. A person comments that there is someone outside, and the one agrees, then wonders how many sins the stranger has committed in his life. Mel then says the stranger killed her dogs. Then Male replies that they will send the stranger to hell. Gamer's colleague says she only saw Ganju in photos. She comments that the protagonist looks much more handsome in person and introduces herself as Hongjia. Ganju says his brother mentioned he had a girlfriend, but never talked about getting married. Hong is a little embarrassed and points to her belly and says she's pregnant, leaving the protagonist surprised. She says it's only been a few days since they found out. Gang will plan to tell the protagonist. After Wang's execution, Gang Ju asks if this is really true. Then Hong confirms and asks if there is a problem. He says no but looks pained. She asked why he's there in uniform. Yengu replies that he was hired as a special agent to execute all Rookulus prisoners. Hong is surprised and asks why he will carry out the executions. And realizing she doesn't know what happened, he starts to explain after hearing the story. Hong is shocked. Ganyu says they are still investigating who carried out the attack. She asked about Gang Ho, since he was on the 5th sublevel for the execution. Ganyu starts to speak, but seeing the look of concern on his sister-in-law's face, he simply can't, so he says there is someone sending signals. From the 5th sublevel, Hong is relieved to hear that. Then the protagonist says he will take her to the upper floors, but she says she will stay because she can help him go down. Then he asks what led her to think that she has the ability to read a person's memory by looking at them, but soon she tells the protagonist not to worry because she hasn't read his thoughts. She explains that she uses her ability to provide psychiatric help to prisoners to find out if they are really guilty or not. Genji asks how they can help him. Then she says the entire 2nd sublevel is under the control of Meal and Mal, two siblings in solitary, who have special and creation-type powers. They have the ability to summon creatures, and when they hit someone's heart, it turns the victim into a puppet. All the prisoners on the 2nd sublevel have become their puppets. But Gang Yu says he already knows this information, because they were disciples of Mongo. So he says he doesn't need information about them, and tells her to go back, but she refuses again. Because some of the siblings' puppets are penitentiary agents, she says. The protagonist will not be able to differentiate the agents from the prisoners since they all became puppets. But she can use the memories to identify them, and Yu sees no point in differentiating them, because he thinks they are already dead, for having been turned into dolls. But Hong says they are still alive, and will return to normal once they are freed from the siblings' power. The protagonist said that there's no way the brothers can do it, but she asks him to try. She is sure that she can convince them. Ganju worries about her safety and the babies. But doesn't matter. She says that before being a future mother, she's a prison officer with a duty to fulfill. Ganju ends up remembering his brother. After thinking a bit, he agrees. He uses his power, causing an energy to begin to surround Hong. She gets startled, and the protagonist's ability lifts her into the air. A sphere forms around her, and then Hong asks what it is. Ganyu explains that his power will keep her safe from any dangerous situation. She finds it strange and hopes it won't affect her body. They continue onward until they encounter several creatures with halos. Hong says that this is Meal's power and reminds the protagonist that other officers were captured. So he asks which of them are agents. She focuses and activates her ability. With a look identifies that the two behind are agents. Then she starts to talk about how gang. You should act, but the sphere begins to darken until she can't see inside, to the point that her voice is even muffled. There is an easier way. He activates his power and says, the officers will be spared, then uses his ability to restrain them. Meanwhile, one of the creatures advances to attack him, but it only took a punch to finish it off. Ganyu says the prisoners will be killed, because this is the easiest way to separate the two groups. The creatures advance to attack in a group, but with a punch they are stopped, and before they could react, Ganyu kicks and with his ability, pierces all the creatures at once. From afar someone watches him through a crystal ball. They are the two siblings. Mel asks her brother what he thinks. She questions if he is stronger than their master, and if he is stronger than the leader of equality. Mile remains silent. Mel hugs him in fear, but her brother tells her not to worry, because it will not be easy for Ganyu to kill them. Hong yells from inside the sphere. She asks why the protagonist imprisoned her that way. Then he apologizes for not having warned beforehand. When she asks what happened, Ganyu replies that the prison guards have been taken to quarantine for now and all the prisoners have been executed. Hong doesn't understand, then says, the execution devices are on the 5th sub-level. But Ganyu says he executed them himself. He asked if there is any problem with that, but she asked whose idea it was, being answered that it was his own. Hong asks if the director agreed, and he confirms that she did. She is silent for a moment and with sorrow in her eyes. She starts to say something but can't. Genju says nothing. She asks if he's okay. Then he says he just fulfilled his duties as a prison guard, and asks if there's anything wrong with that. But Hong says of course there is. She argues that a guard's job is not to kill prisoners, but to rehabilitate them. But before she could continue, Ganju says he's tired of hearing these idealistic speeches. All the time things like what Lhasa or his brother said. He knows very well the result of pursuing these ideals. The prisoners took countless lives of innocent people. Now it doesn't matter anymore whether he is a prison guard or a hero. He realized that he should have killed those who gave up being human beings earlier. Hong is frightened to hear this, and says they are also human. But Ganju doesn't believe what he hears. Then he asked if she's really saying they are human. From the 2nd sublevel are all criminals, who killed hundreds or thousands of people. For Ganyu they deserve to die. In the past there was a lot of controversy over the existence of the death penalty, because many people died unjustly. But he says that since she has psychic ability, then she must have felt how they felt. Hong says they all have their own stories, especially Male and Meal. But Ganyu says everyone in the world has one, including the victims who also have their own stories. And lastly he asks if it really matters if they are killed by him or executed by the death penalty. Hong tries to argue that the death penalty is only for individuals, but Ganju tells her to stop. He just wants her to stop talking, because if she continues he will send her back, and will resolve the situation his own way. After this discussion they continue forward. until they encountered another group of guards, turned into creatures. Ganyu asks her to say which are guards. After identifying them, he prepares. She looks at him with sorrow in her eyes and says, Gano would be very sad if he found out what his brother was doing. Hearing this, Ganyu gets angry. The creatures advance to attack him, but he doesn't move. One of them lands an attack right on the neck, but the blade broke without causing a scratch. Hong's words echo in his head, and remembering that, Ganyu becomes increasingly possessed. While attacking, he reflects to himself that he always boasts, feels angry and frustrated. In his mind comes the memory of Lhasa he can't admit. Then comes the memory of his brother. While Ganyu continues attacking the creatures, Hong is frightened seeing that, but he continues with the attacks. All the creatures advance at once. Some energy balls begin to form. With his power, Daniel thinks about the frustration he carries, then activates mode 5 of his ability, and the balls hit all the creatures at once. He decides he will vent his frustration by killing the prisoners. In a matter of seconds, all the creatures were killed. Only a rain of blood remained. While Ganyu thinks to himself that he will release his frustration, even if it's just a little. From afar, Cinco watches him. Her eye appears to have some ability for this. She blushes and says he got even cooler in the prison. Ganyu continues moving forward. Killing the creatures then appear, until they come across 3 prison guards transformed. But he notices something, and looking to the side, a door opens from there. Emerge 2 people who say it's a pleasure to meet him. They are the 2 siblings, Mel and Meal. Ganyu says he can't believe they came to see him on their own. Comments that it will be less troublesome for him, and says it's also a pleasure to meet them. Hong tries to talk to them, but Mila asks why she didn't go see them, since she should have been sent to heaven. Yengu tells them to deactivate their abilities. Starts to accumulate energy in his hand and says, if they obey, they will have a painless death. Meal asks if there is even an option where they will not be killed. Ganju then explains that the prisoners of the first floor and the first sublevel had the option to use the control devices or not. He looks possessed and says, the monsters on the second sublevel, who killed countless people, will have no choice but to die. Meal says he heard that Ganju is a colleague of his master. Meal, clinging to her brother, talks about when Lhasa captured them and says, Ganju has a very different aura from her. Then she yells, saying the protagonist will go to hell. He starts to charge energy again and says, they will see who will go to hell first. Meal tries to negotiate, saying he will deactivate his abilities if Gang you spares them, but he refuses. Hong tells them that will only make the situation worse. Mill recognizes her then, tries to convince that they have not committed any mortal crime, and says she must understand them. Hong is worried to see that they refuse to cooperate. Ganyu says that will not work at all. Him, with a loop of hatred, says he will not negotiate with monsters. Hong starts to sweat cold. Ganyu says there is no other way, but it's okay because monsters should not feel pain. So he creates a hammer with his ability. Male says he does not wish to fight, and that maybe they can negotiate if he listens to their side of the story. But Ganyu immediately refuses. Hong asked him to talk to the siblings, to resolve peacefully, but he covers her view again in the sphere, and then, with an irritated face, asks her to be quiet and stomps on the ground, which launches his power to bind the siblings. They scream in pain. Genyu comments on the means to torture a villain. He is very familiar with such methods, and he says he didn't know there would come a time when this would come in handy. Hearing this, the siblings become afraid. Male says talking doesn't work, because the protagonist is not a human being. His sister says they are not monsters. After hearing this, Genyu is surprised. The 2 siblings he had captured were actually 2 transformed prisoners. but the voice of the siblings continues to speak in the background, that they are humans with special powers. Gangyu kills the two prisoners without hesitation. The siblings question why people call them differently. They ask what the difference is between them and others. And more creatures appear. But the same instant Gangyu cuts off all their heads. In the blink of an eye, while feeling extremely irritated. From afar Male watches through the crystal ball. Worried. Her brother is using the creatures to break the wall. And asks if she needs help. But she denies. Ganyu's defense is very strong. She creates a magic circle with her power. And uses it on the crystal ball. Then a giant magic circle appears. In front of the protagonist. Right after several giant creatures appear. This is the power of a summoner. But Ganju immediately lands a punch on one of the summons. Because for him, this is nothing compared to a real human being. He jumps and comes down, crushing the creature with a kick. It falls, causing a bang. The inner summons surround him. But he activates his power then with his red ray. And again, cuts all the creatures with a single movement, without suffering a single scratch. Mel is very worried to see that. She asks how long it will take. And Mel says there are still about 10 minutes left. But she says it won't be enough. And draws a little blood from her finger. For a new summoning. But when she is about to use the crystal ball, a bang happens. The ceiling is destroyed, raising a lot of dust. And the siblings don't understand what happened. It was Gangyu who just arrived. Mel already falls into tears, seeing that there is a huge hole in the ceiling. Gangyu says that if he catches the siblings, one by one it will be the end of them, and tells them to deactivate their abilities, so their deaths will be painless. Gangyu stares at the siblings with a look of hatred. They look at the hole he made in the ceiling, and wonder how many abilities he has. But Ganju approaches, then he speaks again. For them to deactivate their abilities. They are afraid, but Mel doesn't listen. And with a clap, creates some summoning circles above Ganju. He looks up. For giant angelic creatures have been summoned: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. But at the same instant, Ganju activates his power and with a single kick, leaves the creatures in pieces. The siblings didn't expect that. Male is speechless, but again creates a summoning circle. But this time he brought prison guards. Then he yells for Gangyu to stay away from them. Mel tries to negotiate using the guards as hostages. But Ganju interrupts him again, telling him to release the guards. The brother hears a voice and looking to the side. Mel is crying, trapped by Ganju's power. The protagonist then says that, if he doesn't release the guards, he will make his sister's death very painful. Saying this, the girl starts to scream in pain. With Ganyu's power, she screams for her brother, while she agonizes in pain and cries more and more. After seeing that scene, Mel agrees to release the guards. He only asks that in return he can talk to Guard Hong. But Ganju again tells him to deactivate his ability. While the girl continues screaming in pain, he says he will only stop when Mel deactivates his power. Mel stays with his sister, after having released the guards. Both the guards and the prisoners. Everyone is without understanding what happened. But the same moment, Gangyu kills all the prisoners there. The siblings are frightened. Even the guards are surprised. Then they ask Ganju what is happening. But he only tells them to go back upstairs. They obey without questioning. Male says that now that he has deactivated his ability, a protagonist should keep his promise. He says he will let the siblings talk to Hong. They are surprised, but Ganju says it's better for them to go somewhere else first, because that scene is not something a pregnant woman should see. Back to where Guard Hong is. She asks what happened, but Gangyu says the job is done. After knowing that all the guards have been released, she asked about the siblings. And Gangyu says they wanted to talk to her before they died. Hong tries to say they can use the control device, but the protagonist tells her not to make him repeat. The monsters of the second sublevel, who killed countless people, will be killed by his own hands. Guard Hong is again astonished by that response. But Meal asks her if they really did something to be killed. He says they did nothing to justify their execution, and asks her to say something about it. Ganju asks her to be quick. She says the siblings' names and says they need to be killed upon hearing this. The siblings hug each other sadly. Hong tries to say something else, but in the end, she ended up not being able to say anything else. Ganju asks if they have anything else to say, but they say nothing. Then the protagonist says he will keep his promise. It's time to start the execution. Mel despairs and starts to beg for them to be spared. She clings to her brother tightly, but Ganju goes to punch. A bang is caused. And after the dust settles, our protagonist is surprised, since their master has just appeared, creating a shield that protected them. The Mago, who is Ganyu's companion in equality. The siblings are surprised by that, and even Ganyu didn't expect that. Mago then asks what is happening there. Our video ends here. If you like it, leave your like. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.